So perhaps I'll say something about the direction where I'm coming from with this. It is Jewish music in the sense that all the pieces that I'm singing today are based on texts from the Bible or from Jewish liturgy, from prayer services. When I study a text for writing about it, I probably spend many hours, sometimes weeks, studying a text before the music emerges for that text. What I've discovered again and again is how these texts can have, I think, a universal application beyond Judaism. One of the things I'm interested in the idea of interfaith is that I think there's a reason for being Jewish as opposed to being something else. This idea that we are all connected, yes, I feel that and I believe that. That there is one God, that's an interesting one. We'll come back to that later in my presentation. There is something that we're all connected to, and yet it seems to me that depending on the faith tradition within which we sit, we may have a different notion of how we encounter God. So for me, I encounter God as a human being, as a spiritual being, but I also encounter God as a Jewish person. And that means that I have a particular history, a particular set of stories, a particular kind of community that has its own way of approaching the divine. And so what we're going to have today is something about that relationship between what does it mean to be Jewish encountering the divine and what does it mean to be human encountering the divine. The Jewish people within our Bible are referred to as Yisrael. And Yisrael, interestingly, has its derivation, the root meaning of the word Yisrael is ambiguous. Yisrael can actually mean the one who wrestles with God. And in that sense, if you hear the word Yisrael in a song, you can consider that, of course, all of us are in some way wrestling with our spiritual questions. And another derivation is Yashar'el, which is straight to God. So the idea that Yisrael, Yashar'el, is a person or the people who are attempting to try and keep that direct connectedness with the divine. And again, that can apply to all of us. There's a beautiful moment within the Bible. It's sometimes considered to be the first conversion. That when Ruth, who was a Moabite woman, actually marries into the Jewish people, and then her husband dies, and she elects to stay with her mother-in-law, and she sings these, or says these beautiful words, saying that I will go with you where you go, and I will stay with you, and where you die, I shall also die. And these famous lines, your God will be my God. And when I wrote this piece, and I set these words, it got me to thinking, what do we mean when we say your God will be my God? Are there different gods? Is it all the same God? In which case, what is the transition that a convert might be making into whichever faith tradition? What does it mean to say, your God will be mine? Is there some homogeneous God? You can say, okay, Islam, there's one God. Everybody agrees it's the same conception. Jewish God, Christian God, everyone within that tradition has the same conception of that God. Well, of course, realistically, that's not the case. If you ask any two Jewish people what their conception of God might be, it's going to be different. So what does it mean to say your God would be my God?